The monitoring station orbited the planet Helios like a metal eye watching for trouble. Inside the control room, a Zethran operator named Kren stared at his screen and saw something wrong. An energy spike. A big one. Not the normal kind of ship traffic that moved through this sector. This was weapons fire. Kren sent the data to the communication hub. His hands shook as he typed the alert codes. Zethrans did not shake. They were logical. But logic told him that 3,000 people on the planet below were about to experience something very bad. The distress call came. 30 seconds later, the voice on the transmission was human. A woman. Her name was Dr. Lisa Morgan, and she was the chief medical officer of the Calorian Research Colony. Her words came fast and clear, cutting through the static like a knife. This is Calorian Settlement 7. We are under attack. Vrex forces. Multiple attack ships. Our shields are down to 60%. We have 3,000 civilians here, including 500 children. We need military support immediately. Anyone receiving this message, please respond. The call went out across the entire sector. Every ship with a receiver heard it. Every station tuned in. The message was simple. The message was desperate. The message would change everything. On the human destroyer USS Defiant, Captain Marcus Hayes was reviewing crew schedules when his communication officer burst through the bridge door. The young officer, named James Cooper, was breathing hard. "Captain, we have a distress call from the Calorian colony. They are under attack by Vrex forces." Captain Hayes stood up. He was a tall man with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen too many bad things. At 48 years old, he had commanded the USS Defiant for 3 years. He had lost people under his command. He had made decisions that cost lives. But he had never ignored a call for help. How far? He asked. 48 hours at maximum speed, James said. What does command say? James hesitated. That hesitation told Marcus everything he needed to know. The answer was not good news. Earth Command is still processing the request. The Galactic Council has issued a statement. They are calling for diplomatic solutions. They say that military intervention would violate the non-interference treaty with the Vrex Collective. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He had been dealing with the Galactic Council for 20 years. The Council was full of species who preferred words to action, who chose safety over morality, who believed that treaties mattered more than children dying on a colony world. Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Marcus said. 5 minutes later, he was talking to Admiral Catherine Wells, the human military commander for this sector. She sounded tired. Marcus, I know what you are thinking. Do not do it. The colony has 500 children, Admiral. The Vrex do not take prisoners for ransom. They take them for work, for slavery. I am aware of the Vrex methods, Catherine said. But we cannot violate council law. The Calorians knew the risks when they built their colony in that region, so we let them die? So we follow our orders, Catherine said, and her voice was hard now. Very hard. You will maintain your current patrol pattern. You will not deviate. That is a direct command, Marcus. The line went dead. Marcus looked at his bridge crew. Every face was watching him. Every face was asking the same question. What would Captain Hayes do? What would their leader choose when the choice was between orders and doing the right thing? He thought about the children on that colony. He thought about what the Vrex would do to them. He thought about what it meant to wear the uniform of a human ship, set course for the Helios system. He said quietly, Captain, James said, that violates. I know what it violates. Do it. The USS Defiant was a destroyer, not a huge warship, but it was fast. It was built for speed and maneuverability. Its crew of 300 people knew their jobs well. Many of them had trained together for years. Many of them had fought together in smaller conflicts, but nothing like this. Nothing against the Rex collective. The Defiant jumped to maximum speed. The ship's engines burned hot. The warp core hummed with power. Everything on the destroyer that could push it faster was pushed to the limit. Marcus watched the star system grow larger on his main view screen. Down on the Calorian colony, Dr. Lisa Morgan watched her people die. The wrecked ships came down from the sky like birds of prey. Their weapons turned buildings into fire. People ran through the streets. Some made it to shelters. Some did not. Morgan was in the medical center with 40 other people. They had brought in 30 wounded in the last hour. Some would live. Some would not. She worked fast and hard, trying to save everyone, knowing that she could not save anyone if the Rex broke through the colony shields. The colony commander, a tall Calorian named Jeff, came into the medical center. His face was burned on one side. His uniform was torn and covered in blood. "We have 12 hours, he said to Morgan. "Maybe less. Our shields will not last longer than that." Morgan did not answer. She was focused on the child in front of her, a girl maybe 7 years old. Shrapnel had cut through her side. Morgan worked fast. The girl would live, but many others would not. Then Jeff's communication officer ran into the room. The officer was young and excited. His fear was gone. "We have a response to the distress call," the officer said. "The human destroyer USS Defiant is coming. They are 48 hours away at maximum speed." Jeff closed his eyes. 48 hours. The colony would be ashes in less than half that time. But 48 hours meant that maybe, just maybe, the humans would arrive in time to save some people. To save the children. On the USS Defiant, Marcus Hayes stood on his bridge and watched his ship race through space. The journey seemed to take forever. Every moment, he wondered if the colony was still fighting. Every moment, he knew that the Rex would not stop until everyone was dead or enslaved. His crew worked without complaint. They knew they were heading toward danger. They knew the odds were bad. But they also knew that Captain Hayes would not lead them into the darkness and abandon them there. He would lead them forward. The star grew larger. The Kelia system appeared on the view screen, and Marcus Hayes prepared himself and his ship for a battle that most people would say they could not win. But Marcus had learned a long time ago that humans were good at doing things that seemed impossible. The USS Defiant came out of warp space like a bullet from a gun. Captain Marcus Hayes stood at the center of his bridge and watched the system appear on his view screen. What he saw made his blood cold. There were hundreds of wrecked ships. The colony below was burning. He could see the fires from orbit, orange and red against the planet's green surface. Cities were gone. The colony shield generator was flickering like a dying star. It would not last much longer. "Tactical status," Marcus commanded. Commander Victoria Park turned from her console. She was a small woman, but her mind was sharp as broken glass. She had fought in 3 different conflicts before joining Marcus's crew. She knew what danger looked like. Rex force consists of 280 attack ships, Captain. 30 capital vessels. Estimated crew across all ships, 200,000 soldiers. Our single destroyer has a combat rating of 0.03% compared to the Rex fleet. In other words, we are outgunned, Marcus said. "Yes, sir. Heavily outgunned. How many Calorians are still alive?" Lieutenant Sarah Williams, the communications officer, checked her scanners. "We are picking up life signs in shelters and underground bunkers. Estimate approximately 2,800 people, including 490 children." Marcus felt something hard form in his chest. Nearly 3,000 people. Nearly 500 children. All depending on him. All depending on a single human. Destroyer that could not win a straight fight against the Rex. But no one on the bridge looked ready to turn back. No one asked to retreat. Every officer, every enlisted person, every crew member understood what it meant to answer a distress call. It meant you did not give up. It meant you fought. Marcus activated the hailing frequencies and broadcasted on all known Rex communication channels. His voice was calm and clear, and he spoke English slowly so that the translation systems could work. "This is Captain Marcus Hayes of the human destroyer USS Defiant. You are attacking a civilian colony in violation of Galactic Council law. You will cease your assault immediately or face military response." The response came back in a series of roars and strange clicking sounds. Then the translation system converted it to human speech. The voice was deep and cold and cruel. "Human destroyer, we are aware of your presence. It is noted. Your warning is noted. Now prepare for destruction." The transmission ended. Marcus looked at his crew. "Stand ready for combat operations. Red alert. All hands to battle stations." The USS Defiant filled with noise. Alarms sounded across every deck. Crew members ran to their stations. In the engine room, engineers prepared the warp core for emergency power bursts. In the weapons section, targeting systems came online. In the shield rooms, technicians powered up every defensive system on the ship. The first Rex attack came 15 minutes later. Dozens of Rex fighters launched from their capital ships. They came toward the USS Defiant in a wave of metal and weapons fire. Victoria Park watched them come on her tactical display. She was calm. She had seen this kind of thing before. "All fighters advancing on our position," Victoria said. "Distance 30,000 kilometers and closing. They will be in weapons range in 90 seconds. Lock all point defense systems," Marcus said. "Fire when in range." The USS Defiant's weapon systems were smaller than the Rex capital ships, but they were precise. They were designed for a ship that was fast and smart and could not survive through raw strength. The Defiant survived through accuracy. When the Rex fighters came into range, the Defiant opened fire. The human point defense systems burned through the Rex fighters like a fire burns through paper. The fighters had not expected this. They had expected the human destroyer to try to run. Instead, the human was standing and fighting. 12 Rex fighters exploded in the first 10 seconds. Another 20 were damaged and retreated. But there were still more coming. "Incoming weapons fire," Victoria called out. "Rex capital ships are charging weapons. Time to contact, 60 seconds. Marcus gripped the armrests of his command chair. He had commanded in combat before. He knew the feeling of his ship being under fire. He knew what it felt like when crew members died because of his orders. But he also knew that turning back was not an option. The first capital ship weapons found their target. The USS Defiant shook with the impact. Alarms screamed across the bridge. Sparks fell from the ceiling panels. One of the junior officers screamed, and then someone was helping him up, and everyone was focused on their jobs. "Shields at 85%, Victoria said, returning fire on the largest capital vessel. The Defiant's weapon systems locked onto the nearest Rex capital ship and fired. The human weapons were smaller, but they were accurate. The Rex ship took hits on its hull. Explosions bloomed across its surface. The capital ship had not expected to be hurt by a single destroyer. Down on the colony, Dr. Lisa Morgan heard the explosions above the planet. Different explosions. Different from the Rex attacks. She stepped out of the medical center and looked up at the sky. There was a human warship in orbit. She could see it moving, see it fighting dots someone had come. For a moment, Morgan felt hope. Real hope, not the desperate kind. Real dawn. But then the Rex forces changed their tactics. They stopped attacking the colony for just a moment. Every Rex ship in the system began moving toward the USS Defiant. They were going to kill the human destroyer first. Then they would kill the colony. On the bridge of the Defiant, Marcus watched the Vrex formation change. He understood what was happening. The Vrex had decided that he was the bigger threat. They were going to concentrate their fire on him. "All ship systems to maximum power," he said. "Helm, keep us moving. Victoria, I want evasive patterns. Make them work for every shot." "Yes, sir," Victoria said. Her fingers flew across her console. The USS Defiant began to dance through space, moving in patterns that made it hard for the Vrex to hit. But there were too many of them. The Vrex weapons kept coming. The Defiant's shields held, but they were getting weaker. The ship was being hit from all sides. Marcus thought about the children down on the colony. He thought about what failure meant. He thought about what it meant to be a human captain in a human ship. He made his choice. "Target the Vrex Formation Center," he ordered. "I want them to understand that we will not go down easily. Fire every weapon we have at the main concentration of their fleet." The USS Defiant unleashed everything. Every weapon system fired at once. The human destroyer became a ball of fire and fury in space. The Vrex fighters and small ships in the center of the formation were torn apart. The Vrex capital ships were hit and damaged. The Vrex commander roared in anger. His name was Vorg Vex, and he had never been challenged like this. A single human destroyer was actually hurting his fleet. It was impossible. It was insane. It was something the Vrex had never experienced before. Vorg Vex ordered his entire fleet to focus on the human ship. He would destroy this destroyer and burn the colony and take the survivors as slaves. No human would ever stand against the Vrex collective again. But what Vorg Vex did not understand was that humans were different. Humans were born on a world where things tried to kill them every day. Humans had learned to fight when they should have died. Humans had learned to adapt when they should have broken. And Captain Marcus Hayes had learned all of those things better than most. The battle was not just about firepower. Firepower was what the Vrex understood. Firepower was what the Vrex knew how to use. They had spent 10,000 years building ships and weapons larger than anyone else's. They believed that bigger and stronger always won. But the USS Defiant was fighting a different kind of war. Commander Victoria Park was a woman who had studied the way predators hunted on different planets. She understood that the fastest hunters were not always the strongest hunters. The smartest hunters were the ones that survived. The USS Defiant was smart. "All capital ships are moving to concentrate fire on our position," Victoria said, watching her tactical screen. "Time to critical damage. 3 minutes. "Then we make 3 minutes count," Marcus replied. "Target the weakest points in their formation. Break them apart. Make them think instead of attack." The USS Defiant fired with precision. Every shot was aimed at a weakness, a gap in the Vrex armor, a section of the formation that could break apart. The human weapons were not big, but they were accurate. They were efficient. They were used by people who understood that waste meant death. 3. Vrex capital ships were damaged so badly that they had to retreat. Another 2 lost weapon systems. The Vrex formation, which had been tight and organized, began to break apart. And when the Vrex began to break apart, they became confused. The Vrex collective had never faced an enemy that was faster and smarter than they were. They knew how to fight enemies that were weaker. They knew how to overwhelm enemies with force. But this human destroyer was different. It moved in ways that made no sense. It attacked in patterns that seemed random, but were actually perfectly calculated. Vorg Vex roared his anger and confusion. He ordered his entire fleet to continue attacking. But something had changed in the humans. They were not trying to survive anymore. They were not fighting to retreat. They were fighting to win. In the engine room of the USS Defiant, Chief Engineer Derek Foster and his team were performing miracles. The main engines were running hot, pushing beyond what any sane engineer would allow. The warp core was burning fuel at a rate that should have blown up the ship. But Derek knew that the captain needed this ship to be fast. So he made it fast. "We have 12 minutes before the core goes critical," Derek shouted over the noise of the engines. "The captain needs more than 12 minutes. We cannot push harder," one of his junior engineers said. "The systems will melt. Then we repair them as they melt," Derek said. "This colony has 500 children. This ship is the only thing standing between those children and slavery. Move." Derek was not a big man, but his crew followed him because they understood what he meant. They understood that this was not just a battle. This was something bigger. The USS Defiant spun through space like a dancer. Victoria Park was using maneuvers that would normally damage the ship's structure. But there was no normal anymore. There was only fight or die. The Vrex weapons continued to find their target. The Defiant was hit again and again. The ship's armor was strong, but nothing was strong enough to take unlimited punishment. Compartments were breached. Crews were evacuated. The ship began to bleed atmosphere and fire in the medical bay. Dr. Anthony Chun worked on the wounded. The ship's crew was getting hurt. 2 people were already dead. 10 more had injuries that would keep them out of combat. But still, they kept fighting. Still, the ship kept fighting. "How many can we take?" Chun asked his medical assistant, a young woman named Grace Torres. "Maybe another 10 critical injuries before we start losing people we could have saved," Grace said. "Then we do not get hit again," Chun said, and went back to work, but they would get hit again. That was not a question. The question was how many hits the Defiant could take before it broke. Vo or Gdex made a decision. The human destroyer was proving too difficult to kill, but the colony on the planet below was still defenseless. Vorgdex ordered a portion of his fleet to break away from the fight with the human destroyer and focus on the colony's remaining shield generator. When Victoria saw this on her tactical display, she understood immediately. The Vrex were going to finish the colony while she was busy fighting the main fleet. Captain, Vrex force separating. 100 fighters and 5 capital ships moving toward the planet. They are targeting the colony's shield generator. Marcus made a choice that should not have worked. He ordered the USS Defiant to break off from the main Vrex formation and move to intercept the separating force. This left his ship exposed to the rest of the Vrex fleet. But it was the only way to stop the Vrex from destroying the colony. The USS Defiant accelerated and moved to block the Vrex assault group. Victoria targeted the nearest capital ships and opened fire. Human weapons tore into Vrex armor. 2 of the Vrex capital ships were hit. 1 exploded. The other was crippled, but the remaining force was still pushing toward the planet. They had weapons that could penetrate the colony shields. They had the firepower to break through and then something happened that would later be recorded in history books. The USS Defiant positioned itself between the attacking Vrex force and the colony. The human destroyer was smaller. The human destroyer was damaged. But the human destroyer was also determined. Marcus gave the order. Full power to shields. Put every ounce of energy we have into forward shields. I want them as strong as we can make them. The Defiant shields flared bright and blue in the darkness of space. The forward shields absorbed the fire that was meant for the colony. The ship shook violently. Crew members were thrown from their seats. The Defiant took damage that would have destroyed a normal ship, but the colony was protected. Down on the colony, Dr. Elisa Morgan watched her shields stop flickering. The Vrex assault group had broken off. The colony shields held at 28%. The people below would live. Not all of them. Many had already died, but most would live. "Get evacuation shuttles ready," Morgan commanded to her colony commander. We are leaving this planet." On the USS Defiant, Marcus looked at Victoria. "How long until the evacuation shuttles clear the colony?" 4 hours, Captain. The Calorians are moving fast, but with this many people, it will take time. Then we hold this position for 4 hours, Marcus said. "Sir, the ship cannot take 4 more hours of this punishment. We will lose critical systems. We might lose structural integrity. Then we lose them," Marcus said. "Because 4 hours from now, those people will be alive. And that is what matters." Victoria Park nodded. She had known what the captain would say. She had known because she understood humans. And what she understood was that humans would burn their own ships to save people they had never met. The evacuation shuttles launched from the Calorian colony in waves. First came the children. Then came the elderly and the injured. Then came the people with families and things they wanted to keep. The shuttles were packed tight, people standing pressed against each other, holding hands, hoping that each shuttle that launched was a moment of danger. For 30 seconds, the colony shields had to open. For 30 seconds, the shuttles were exposed to Rex fire. For 30 seconds, people could die. The USS Defiant stood between the wrecks and the evacuation shuttles. The human destroyer took fire meant for defenseless ships full of refugees. The Defiant shields blazed bright. The ship's hull was scarred and burned. But it did not move. It did not break. In one shuttle, a Calorian mother held her daughter. The girl was 4 years old. She did not understand what was happening. She only understood that her mother was holding her tight and that sometimes loud explosions happened above them. "We are safe," the mother whispered. "The human ship will keep us safe." And the human ship did. On the bridge of the USS Defiant, Marcus watched shuttle after shuttle dock with his ship. His destroyer had a capacity for 500 people. There were 4,000 Calorians coming up. Every available space would be filled. Cargo holds would become temporary shelters. Engineering sections would hold families. The ship would be packed past any reasonable limit. "Approaching the point where we cannot take more people," Victoria reported. "But there are still 800 on the planet." "Get them up anyway," Marcus said. "Find space. Compress whatever we have to. I do not care if it is uncomfortable. I care that they live." The evacuation continued. Hour 2. Hour 3. The wrecks threw everything at the USS Defiant. The ship's armor was failing in places. Hull breaches were reported on 3 decks. The engineering section was now an inferno of overheating systems. Derek Foster and his team worked in the heat. The main engines were pushing beyond any safe limit. The warp core was glowing red, burning through fuel at a rate that would destroy the ship. But Derek's team stayed at their posts. They made adjustments. They rerouted power. They kept the ship moving and fighting. "Captain, we cannot hold this much longer," Derek reported to the bridge. His voice was calm, but Marcus could hear the strain underneath. "The core will reach critical in 20 minutes. After that, we will start losing main systems." "I understand," Marcus said. "Keep us online as long as you can." In the medical bay, Dr. Anthony Jen was treating the wounded again. More of the ship's crew were getting hurt. The explosions were getting closer. The radiation was getting stronger. But Chun and his team kept working. They knew that every person they saved might live to see home again. The final evacuation shuttle launched at hour 3. 800 people were pressed into it, along with 300 more packed into smaller emergency escape pods. Every person that could leave the planet was leaving. "All Calorians are accounted for," Victoria said. "Shuttle count is 142. All docking within the next 10 minutes. Marcus felt something release in his chest. The colony was safe. The people were safe. Now he just had to keep his ship and crew alive long enough to get them to safety. But the wrecks had not given up. Vortex had not accepted defeat. He ordered his entire fleet to press forward. He would destroy this human destroyer and its cargo of refugees. He would make an example of the humans who dared to interfere with the Vrex collective. The assault was brutal. It was focused. It was designed to kill. The USS Defiant took hits that should have broken the ship. The forward shields collapsed. The secondary shields took the next assault. Then the tertiary shields. Then the ship's armor took direct hits. Explosions bloomed across the destroyer's hull. Compartments were evacuated. Systems failed out in the engine room. Derek Foster watched his instruments go dark. The main power was failing. The warp core was going critical. In another minute, it would explode. "Get everyone out," he ordered his team. "Move to the emergency section now." "Chief, what about you?" one of his engineers asked. "I will manage the shutdown sequence from here. Go." Derek's team did not want to leave him. But they went, because that was the order. Because they understood that Derek was buying them time. Derek worked fast. He manually shut down the automated systems. He rerouted the emergency coolant. He diverted the overflow energy into the secondary systems. It was not standard. It was not by the book. But it was what was needed. The core stabilized. Not safe, not normal, but not exploding. Derek checked his instruments and smiled. He had bought the captain another hour of power. Another hour to get the refugees to safety. He turned to leave the engineering section and found his way blocked by flames. A main pipeline had ruptured. The compartment was filling with superheated gas. Derek turned back. There was another way out. Through the reactor chamber, he ran toward the secondary exit and found it blocked by debris. The explosion that had caused all this damage had sealed that way too. Derek stood in the middle of the engineering section and understood that he was not leaving this place. He thought about the children on the colony. He thought about them safe on a human destroyer. He thought about Marcus keeping them safe. And he was satisfied. "Captain," he said into his communicator, "engineering is secure. The core will hold for another hour. After that, you will need to shut it down manually or it will explode." Marcus heard the message. He understood what it meant. Derek had trapped himself in the engineering section. "Get to the secondary exit, Derek, now." "Secondary exit is blocked, sir. But the evacuation is the priority. Keep the ship moving. Keep those people safe." The communicator went silent. Marcus felt something cold settle in his heart. Derek Foster had chosen to stay at his post. Derek had sacrificed his life to save 4,000 refugees. And Marcus would honor that choice by making sure that sacrifice meant something. "All hands, this is the captain. We have one more hour of power. After that, we will need emergency measures. I want everyone focused on getting these refugees to safety. Derek Foster has given us this time. Do not waste it." On the bridge, every officer understood. They had just lost one of their own. But they also understood that Derek had bought them something precious. Time. The USS Defiant, crippled and bleeding and broken, limped through space. Behind it came the evacuation shuttles. Ahead of it was safety dot, and in the engine room, Derek Foster made sure the systems held until the very last second. The USS Defiant reached the Galactic Council outpost at Alpha Station with its engines smoking and its hull scorched black. The ship had taken damage that should have destroyed it 3 times over. The crew was exhausted. The refugee bays were packed with 4,000 Calorians, many of them crying, many of them traumatized, but all of them alive. As the ship docked, the Calorian families began to leave. They walked into the receiving station, and there were people waiting for them. Medical teams, food stations, safe places. Children ran to their parents. Families held each other and wept with relief. Dr. Lisa Morgan stepped off the USS Defiant and stood in the receiving station. She looked back at the human destroyer that had saved her people. The ship was a wreck. It had fought a battle it should not have survived. And it had survived because the humans inside it had refused to accept defeat. The Galactic Council called for an immediate investigation. The records showed that the USS Defiant had violated direct orders from Earth Command. The records showed that Marcus Hayes had engaged a superior force without authorization. The records showed that the human destroyer had caused significant damage to multiple Rex colony ships. By Council law, all of this was a crime. War without authorization was forbidden. Engagement with the Rex Collective was forbidden. Violating orders was forbidden. The tribunal was held in the council chamber. It was a large room with representatives from 100 different species. They sat in rising rows and looked down at Captain Marcus Hayes. He stood alone in the center of the chamber. His uniform was torn and burned. His face was scarred from the heat of battle. His eyes were tired. The prosecutor was a Zethran. Zethrans believed in rules. Zethrans believed that civilization was built on following rules. The prosecutor spoke for 3 hours about how Marcus had broken every rule that governed human military conduct. Then it came time for Marcus to speak. I received a distress call from a colony of 3,000 people, Marcus said. His voice was quiet but steady. That colony included 500 children. The Rex Collective was attacking them. The Galactic Council said that I could not intervene. That military action violated treaties. He paused and looked at the tribunal. I am a human. Humans do not ignore children who are in danger. Humans do not calculate the risk and decide that politics matters more than lives. We are not built that way. We could not be if we wanted to. A representative named Jean stood up. Zan was from a species that had worked with humans before. She understood humans better than most. The record shows that the USS Defiant engaged 280 Rex vessels. The record shows that one ship against 280 enemies should not have any survivors. And yet the colony was saved. 4,000 lives were saved. How do you explain this? We were better trained, Marcus said. We had better tactical doctrine. We understood that overwhelming force is not the only way to win a battle. We understood that speed and intelligence matter. We understood that if you fight for something you believe in, you can accomplish impossible things. The Rex representative roared in anger. Vorg Vex had returned to the council. His fleet had been damaged. His honor had been wounded. He demanded retribution. He demanded that the humans be punished. He demanded that the USS Defiant be destroyed and its captain executed. The human vessel attacked my fleet without provocation. The human commander violated the treaty between our species. Justice requires that blood be shed. The council chamber fell silent. The judgment would come down to this moment. Would the council protect the humans, or would they sacrifice Marcus to keep the Rex happy? Then Dr. Lisa Morgan stood up. She was not a diplomat. She was not a government official. She was just a doctor from a small colony. But she stood up and she spoke. My name is Lisa Morgan. I was the chief medical officer of the Calorian colony. I watched my people die under Rex assault. I watched buildings burn. I watched the Rex slaughter civilians. And then I watched the humans come. She looked directly at the Rex representative. You say that humans broke the treaty by defending us. But you broke the treaty first when you attacked a civilian colony. You violated the covenant of peace when you chose conquest over coexistence. The humans did not violate anything. The humans did what any moral species would do. They defended the innocent. The council chamber was silent. One by one, Other representatives began to stand. Species that had never challenged the council before found their voices. Species that had always accepted Rex dominance began to speak. A representative from the Calorians spoke about how humans had taught them that help existed when you called for it. A representative from the Zethrans spoke about how humans demonstrated that moral courage was valuable in galactic affairs. A representative from the Centaurs spoke about how humans showed that civilization was built not just on rules, but on choosing to do the right thing even when it was difficult. The vote was close, but it was clear. The USS Defiant would not be decommissioned. Captain Marcus Hayes would not be executed. The Council would introduce new language recognizing humanitarian intervention as acceptable under extraordinary circumstances. The Vrex Collective, recognizing that their authority was being challenged, withdrew from the tribunal. Volbex did not speak again. The Vrex had concluded that humans were not worth the cost of conflict. Deathworlders operated under different rules. Better to leave them alone and focus on easier targets. 3 weeks later, the USS Defiant was being repaired at the Council's expense. A new destroyer was being built. It would be called the USS Resolve. Marcus would command it. He stood in the repair bay and watched his old ship being fixed. The workers, both human and alien, moved carefully across the destroyer's hull. They were patching holes. They were replacing armor. They were bringing the ship back to life. Dr. Lisa Morgan found him there. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "I wanted to look you in the face and tell you that you saved my people. You saved my life. You gave my colony a future." Marcus turned to look at her. "I did my job," he said. "No," Morgan said. "You did more than your job. You risked everything for people you had never met. You broke orders. You defied a government. You fought an enemy you could not defeat. And you won. Because humans are extraordinary." Marcus smiled. In the cargo hold of the USS Defiant, there was a wall covered with drawings. Children from the Calorian colony had drawn pictures of their rescue. Pictures of explosions in human ships and people being saved. Lieutenant Commander Derek Foster's replacement collected these drawings. She would make sure they were not forgotten. In the medical bay, Dr. Anthony Chan received a message. A child from the colony wanted to thank him. The child had survived only because Chun had treated her injuries. She wanted him to know that she would live because of what he had done. Chun read the message and understood something. This was why humans served in military ships. Not for glory, not for rewards, but for moments when they could save lives. For moments when they could matter. The USS Resolve launched 3 months later. It carried the same crew. It carried the same captain. It carried the same understanding that humans were different. That humans would answer calls for help. That humans would risk everything for the innocent. As the new destroyer moved into deep space, a message was broadcast across all known communication frequencies. It was not an official message. It was not from the government. It was a message from the Vrex Collective to every species they had ever conquered. Warning: human war vessel approaching fast. And all across the galaxy, species that had lived under Vrex domination began to hope. Because humans had arrived. Because humans had shown that one ship, one captain, and one crew of ordinary people could change the future of a galactic civilization. Because humans understood something that no other species seemed to, that the right thing to do is the only thing to do, no matter the cost.